It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranormal.
He meddled in things that you think before. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? This phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hi, I'm Oxide Kaiju, to my left.
Jasmine with.
And across.
Eli Watson.
And we are
Cryptid Campfire.
Hey, everybody.
And today we have a very special, two very special guests with us. We have both Tobias and Emily Wayland of the Singular Fortean Society. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Right on. I'm glad to have you here. So we're going to talk about, for a short while, a little bit about your book that just recently came out, The Lake Michigan Mothman. And then after that, we're going to follow up with a little bit of some questions about the Singular Fortean Society, if that's all right with you.
Sure. That sounds great.
Right on. Does anyone have any questions first?
No, you take it away.
Right.
Because you read the whole book, right?
I
You
did
a
read
review.
the whole book, yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you addressed, Tobias, early on in your book, the misconception that Mothman sightings stopped after the Silver Bridge collapse in 1967. And you instead posit that it was and still is a recurring phenomenon. And my question to you is, was it difficult in any way addressing that misconception?
It wasn't difficult from a, research or investigatory standpoint. There was some pushback, of course. I don't think it's any secret to anybody who's involved in this field at all that there is a significant number of gatekeepers, and they have the narrative for stuff like this, sort of exactly where they want it, and they're very resistant to any kind of change. And so having that established narrative threatened hasn't always gone over very well. And the other part of that too is that once it's really been established, you're fighting not just the establishment, but you have to fight with everybody who has already just sort of taken the common narrative at its word. Like, I can't tell you how many times people have come at me with the stunning revelation that, did you know that Mothman is a harbinger of disaster?
Whoa.
So it's just news to me. I had never heard of it before, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it hasn't been easy from that particular standpoint, but the evidence really seemed quite evident, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, that the collapse of the Silver Bridge really was only ever a convenient ending to that narrative, and really nothing more. I struggle to find any sort of causal relationship in anything Keel ever wrote or anything anybody else was covering at the time. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, maybe, what do you think the reason is that people want the narrative to end there? Like, why is it that they keep under wraps, or maybe they don't make it as well known that sightings did occur after the bridge collapse?
Well, sure. I think that basically what it comes down to is there's really nothing people love more than a convenient narrative ending, frankly. So when you look at the collapse of the Silver Bridge back in December of 1967, what you've got there is a very convenient narrative ending to that story. As tragic as it was, it gave that story its ending, and I think that it allowed people to at least begin to make sense of what they had been experiencing. So suddenly all of those sightings of Mothman meant something, and maybe even on some level, as awful as it is to contemplate, maybe those sightings of Mothman were able to provide some, narrative relief regarding the collapse of that bridge.
Yeah, it makes it a little more compelling, and it gives it some meaning.
So, Tobias, throughout the book, you place a lot of importance on backing up your sources, even going so far as to explain how IP addresses work, and maybe this is like why I like you so much, but you stress the importance on citing reports that had follow-ups with witnesses, and I'm not sure if this is the right term, but less importance on ones that did not. And I just would like you to explain a little bit of why this process and the way you conduct your investigations is so important in this field.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That was a conscious decision from very, very early on in the investigation. I started covering the sightings journalistically, and so right from the start, I felt like I had an obligation to our readers, if nobody else, to provide really what I would consider as at least the facts that I could best verify. So, I might not be able to say, okay, we know for sure Mothman's flying around Chicago or something, but I could say, well, I know that's what this person said they saw.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I didn't know that, then I feel like people deserve for me to tell them. There's something to be said for an informed public, and so that was really my intention from the very beginning, to make sure that I was informing people as best as I could. And then as the investigation went on, and as these things do, it grew and started to take on a life of its own. And at that point, really being completely open and honest was the only way to actually be able to control the narrative at all, frankly, which was something that I really felt was necessary, because once these things get onto the internet, like I said, they take on this life of their own, and misinformation spreads very, very quickly. And so by being open and honest and providing people with every detail that I could, that I could ethically. I'm not going to out any witnesses who want anonymity or anything like that. People are just going to have to take my word for it. But by being able to do that, then I could fairly easily combat some of the larger misinformation out there. I don't like to talk about it a ton, but it's cryptozoology and the paranormal and everything. So there was some drama involved, and what we had were certain parties who would have loved nothing more than to tank the entire investigation for their own particular self-service. And so it was even more important for me to be able to be as credible as possible by being as open and honest as possible, just to be able to combat that specifically, to say, okay, look, this person is trying to tell you that it's a hoax, or, so-and-so made this up, or, Lon made it up, or I made it up, or whatever. And I'm going to tell you that that's not true. And I've got all of this evidence that I'm willing to provide. I've got all of this research and everything else. So that at the very least, at a bare minimum, people know that the specific misinformation being provided by parties who have something to gain from just tanking the whole thing is incorrect. And so really it just kind of snowballed as things went on, and it just became more and more important to make sure that, we were crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's and everything. And, it ended up being well, let's just say I'm really happy that I covered it the way I did from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really well done, well researched. So I guess my next question is, you worked with, and are probably still working with, Lon Strickler.
Sure.
And, he's pretty legendary. So I just wanted to ask, how was working alongside him?
Oh, it was great. I talk to Lon almost every day.
Oh, right on.
He's a great guy, frankly. It's funny. I didn't really know who he was a lot before 2017. So I had been up until then, like after my time with MUFON, I had been just sort of investigating on my own and reading all of the books that I liked, and I didn't spend a lot of time on the internet, researching paranormal stuff. I was just more of a book guy. I grew up reading like John Keel and Jacques Vallée and Warren Coleman and Brad Steiger and all those guys, and so that's what I would always turn back to if I just wanted to read about paranormal stuff outside of what I was doing. And so I didn't know a ton about Lon until 2017 when I saw he was getting these reports in. And so, I was like, well, I have to talk to this guy, obviously. Like, if I want to cover this story, like, he's one of the guys that I need to talk to. And so I got a hold of him and asked him if I could interview him. I was like, hey, I want to interview you, and I'm going to write an article about it. I'm going to publish it in the Singular Fortean Society, and he was super cool about it. He had no problem talking to me. He was very forthcoming. He was very open with his own particular speculation. We talked for a while about what he thought maybe it could be, and he had no problem talking about any of the cases and getting into like specific details and stuff. And it was really nice, honestly. And not much has changed. Lon is who he is, and he takes witness privacy very seriously, which is something we all do. And it's rubbed some people the wrong way, I think. Not wanting to provide them with witness information and stuff. But that's just part of what makes him a good guy, frankly. And so working with Lon, it's been fantastic. Continues to be fantastic, frankly. He's a very easy guy to work with. Right
on. I'm happy to hear that.
That's dope.
Yeah.
I guess I had a question. So Eli, you read the whole book.
Yeah.
And I only got to read the chapter 4 of the book. I really like that chapter. There's some pretty good stories in there. But I had a question. So stop me if this is like a spoiler or anything. But in chapter 4, there's a report of like a Van Helsing type character that pops out the bushes, gun in hand, shooting at the Mothman. He's a mystery man. But I was curious, Tobias, and I guess to Emily too, do you guys have any theories or ideas who that guy was?
Let me refresh.
There's a lot of facts.
My memory here.
I think it was 2 people at this dam.
Oh, was this by the dam? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know there's like a bunch of...
I think this was the only one that actually involved firearms. I have no idea. This was so fun where those guys were up by the dam, and it was dark out. And there was some mysterious figure, shooting. I honestly don't know. I will say, there really hasn't been any other reports of firearms or anything else involved. I know one guy in central Illinois talked about seeing like military or paramilitary or something right around the time of his sighting. But honestly, those are cases where those are cases where I don't know how much I could personally, vouch for the veracity of them necessarily. Like that doesn't mean that they're made up in any way. But I know, like specifically, like that one from the dam. As far as I know, that was literally like an emailed report, and nobody was able to follow up. And so that's the kind of thing. And this is one thing that I've done a little differently than the other guys that I've been working with. So because I always approach this journalistically, if I can't get a hold of a witness, like if they just send me one email or something, and I can never follow up with them, even, through subsequent emails, I don't publish it. I've got a whole, folder of emails, one-off emails that people have sent me. Some of them are pretty compelling, but if I can't get a hold of that witness, it's never going to get published because I can't verify those details. But, Lon and Manuel, they run their sites in a more blog format. And so I know specifically Lon's philosophy is just kind of just to put it all out there and let people decide for themselves, which is totally fine. I'm not saying that that's the wrong way to do it. I'm just saying that's not how I do it because we sort of have a slightly different approach overall. But yeah, both of those were ones where you want to go back to what you said before about maybe some of them were more important or whatever than others. Yeah, those were some that, there really wasn't much follow-up. Again, I don't know that they didn't happen. They fit a certain profile, but at the same time, it's definitely not the best cases. They don't have the most evidence. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a cool story. Maybe somebody was shooting at Mothman by a dam in Indiana, but without actually ever being able to talk to the witnesses or anything. We can really only speculate. Stuff like that just kind of adds to the lore without really, I think, shedding any light on anything, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely really cool.
Yeah, maybe it was the comedian.
Yeah. And so you are still receiving reports about Mothman, are you correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, lately, probably at the end of 2019, we started receiving reports from the Rosemont area, just outside of Chicago. There were even actually a decent amount of reports coming from the immediate vicinity of O'Hare Airport, oddly enough, which, kind of seems strange to a lot of people. And I get that, because when you think, O'Hare International Airport, you're probably thinking, well, this is a really developed area. It's kind of in the middle of a city or something, right? But honestly, there's a relatively decent amount of real wide open area around that airport. I was just down there 2 weeks ago. So I was filming this documentary for German public television of all time. And, we wanted to, cover some of the O'Hare stuff. And, yeah, I drove all around O'Hare. I've been there before, but, just as somebody flying in usually and then flying out. But, yeah, you can get into some relatively isolated areas there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to bring this up. This is relatively new, and I feel like I can bring this up, is the Small Town Monsters Mothman Legacy.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you guys... Fill us in on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't have a ton of details. I've talked to Seth about it a little bit. It's still very much in the planning stage, but, Seth has always had a very similar approach to the subjects as us, which is great. He really just wants to examine these things as objectively as possible, and provide people with, because none of us have any real, hard and fast answers for this stuff. So I think the best we can do is give everybody all of the information that we have, and then we can speculate on it some, as long as we all admit that that's what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that we're definitely on the same page there. So I've known Seth for, I don't know, probably, what do you think, Emily? A year?
2 years?
2 years? Okay, something like that.
We met him when he was filming The Beast of Bray Road.
That's right.
Mm.
Yeah, that was another one that we just went for. We were like, oh man, Small Town Monsters was filming this documentary on the Bray Road Beach. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a hold of him. I don't know this guy, but I'm just going to be like, hey man, can I come out and interview you for the Singular Fortean Society? And Seth is awesome. So he said, yeah, sure, come on out. You can come on location with us, and I'll talk to you, and you can see where we're shooting and everything. So that was fantastic. And then we did Terror in the Skies not too long after, because he wanted to cover, some of the stuff around Chicago for that. And then after the book came out, and I'm not just saying this, you can read his review. I think he was even nice enough to put it on Amazon. After the book came out, I think that he really thought that, hey, there's really something to this, and it deserves more of a look than maybe it had been getting. Certainly more of a look than we had time to do in Terror in the Skies. I think,
Right.
it was maybe 15, 20 minutes total. So
Right.
I think what we're looking at is probably going to be a 90-minute episode of us going out and just investigating. I guess I don't know how much I should talk about what we're actually going to do. And
Spoilers.
Because, again, we haven't nailed everything down yet as far as what we're going to go do. But I would imagine, kind of top of my list right now, because it's the most active sighting area is, that Rosemont, Rosemont, O'Hare. I have a couple favorite sightings that I think that we really got to dig into that got us the best evidence. Everything going on in Woodstock was
My favorite.
Yeah, that was intense. So yeah, what I don't want to cover is the stuff that wasn't really followed up on very much. That really doesn't provide a lot of good evidence. I even say in the book, and I really meant this. If I knew then what I know now, I really would have pushed harder, I think, to do things a little differently, and just never let some of those reports that weren't followed up on really ever see the light of day. I don't think anybody knew what we had when it first started. Now, it's not really an issue. We're all on the same page and had been for, a year and a half, 2 years. And so, nobody publishes that stuff anymore. Yeah. But at the very beginning, everybody was just kind of oh, well, I'm going to keep doing the same thing I've always done. I'm not going to treat this any differently. What I've always done is just publish everything anybody ever sends me for any reason. And I really think that I imagine everybody would agree with me if they were here now, Lon and Manuel. But I think we would have approached it a little differently and just not even reported a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to avoid, because frankly, they're not that interesting, and they get way too much attention. And there are enough interesting reports that I think that we could concentrate on, where we do have good witnesses, and there has been good, like, on-site investigation and everything else. And I think that's probably what people want to see anyway. So I think, once we really sit down and put our heads together, that Emily and Steph and I are going to approach it in that way, however that works out to be.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
But what you're saying is that we can't expect a Van Helsing scene in Mothman Legacy?
Look, am I going to be armed? Yes.
Oh!
I'm shoot my gun in the air. Oh, yes. So
One-man
probably,
war.
I mean, I don't know. Right?
Going Rambo on Mothman.
So now I want to kind of switch over to the Singular Fortean Society. And what inspired you to start it?
I'm going to let Emily talk, because I've been talking for a long time.
I have a couple of questions saved up for Emily, so...
Oh boy. Well, as far as getting started, I think it was pretty simple. We got together, we figured out that we liked some of the same stuff. There was a little bit of a difference between him and I. My level of interest was basically just like a casual, interest, and his was seriously like he had been doing this with MUFON already. I think at that point he had finished working with MUFON, and you had, Tobias, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had started doing a couple blogs on unexplainedmysteries.com.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was doing at that time for sure. Like just to keep my writing skills up. I think it's because if you stop writing, you're just dead in the water.
Right.
Right.
So we just we were. I mean, it was pretty early in our dating that I think we kind of noticed that we had different that we had a shared interest, but we also had complementary skill sets. So we did our first investigation at a local cemetery. I took pictures, he did the writing, so it just kind of made sense to do this. And I think, in a way, our different levels of involvement in this field offered two different perspectives as well. His was more like a veteran approach, very investigative, and I think me being new gave that perspective as well. So that's how it kind of, I guess, got started. We didn't really know what we were getting into. We literally just kind of saved up our tax refund, got a website, and went with it. And
right on.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Well, I have kind of a silly question that might be a little embarrassing for someone who hosts a podcast about cryptozoology, but before knowing you guys and before knowing about the Singular Fortean Society, I didn't know what Fortean meant. That was a word that I never... Well, in that case, can you maybe explain to us what exactly a Fortean is?
Yeah, definitely. Again, that is the most common question. Every conference we ever go to, just literally any place that we ever display our logo, we're going to get asked about it. So the word Fortean comes from Charles Fort, who was an early 20th century collector of weird news stories. So he would collect these weird news stories from all over the world, and he would compile them, and he would write about them. And he would speculate quite a bit, often very wildly, often very tongue-in-cheek. And he would approach these subjects holistically. And so one of his most famous quotes is, "One measures a circle beginning anywhere." And that is to say, by examining any aspect of the paranormal, any of this weirdness, you can learn something about all of it. And so that's how we approach these subjects. There's so much overlap between sighting reports, even from, seemingly or purportedly disparate phenomena. So, for instance, we'll have, I talked to a lady relatively recently who had a flying humanoid, like Mothman type sighting out in Maryland.
Ooh.
And after her sighting, she and her son both experienced like this weird haunting phenomenon. So they saw this Mothman type thing, and they go home, and all of a sudden their radio's turning itself on and off. And you see that across the board. Well, just between, like for instance, our friend Joshua Kitchen writes about this stuff pretty frequently, and his last book, Thieves in the Night, covered it pretty well. And it's sort of in the same vein as like Valley's Passport to Magonia or something, where the whole book is about the similarities between, like fairy child abduction and modern alien abduction narratives, and it's fascinating stuff. And it's exactly how we approach this stuff, because those similarities, those commonalities, like they exist, and you can't ignore them. So anyway, that's what Fortean means, and that's where that comes from.
That's dope.
Yeah, right on.
Well, thank you for taking the time to explain that. I mean, you mentioned that you've explained it multiple times at conventions and speakings and appearances and things like that, so I appreciate you taking the time to explain it again for us here.
No problem. Honestly, it's very well rehearsed at this point, so it's really in my comfort zone.
Actually, a lot of people mispronounce it as 14.
I'm not gonna lie, I would have said that, but I did go to your YouTube channel and I did some research to make sure that I was pronouncing it correctly, just like I do with a lot of the things we say on this podcast.
I was also gonna ask, what has been like the most challenging aspect of the Singular Fortean Society? Whether it be people or I don't know.
Well, Emily, what do you think? Like, what's been your biggest challenge? And if you say putting up with me, I get it. I'll be a little hurt, but I get it.
I think part of it has been navigating the community. I would say that, well, I'll just touch on the Woodstock experience briefly. So that one really touched me from like a human perspective, because it was just they were such normal people. They experienced something very scary to them, and it was very real. And I mean that if you need a reminder of why we do what we do, it's that. But I think the field also contains a lot of misconceptions from, like, paranormal television is both a blessing and a curse. It's made this community more approachable to many, and more accessible and more mainstream, but at the same time, it's reality television.
Mm-hmm.
And so the expectations out there in the field, I think you lose some of, you don't have it's hard to find the people who are doing it the same way, for the same reasons that you are. And I would say we have made some great friendships and great connections in the field now, and are able to work with them on these cases. But in the beginning, that was very difficult, because you kind of enter the field assuming everybody's in it for the same reasons you are, and that's not the case. So I think that was something that I did not expect getting started in this.
Yeah, it kind of blindsided me too, frankly, because I probably very naively assumed that everybody was exactly like us, or like me specifically, who had had paranormal experiences and just remembered how isolating those can be. It was like, I want to talk to people, I want to help them. I want to get the word out that people shouldn't be embarrassed to talk about this stuff, and if you can get a deeper understanding of it, that's great. But there's so many opportunistic people out there who, they're so-called investigators, but I have a feeling that there are probably a lot of people that just kind of want to be cool and edgy and don't really care that much about the paranormal. And they don't treat witnesses right, and that's when people get hurt. So, that sucks, honestly.
Yeah.
Or they even, I don't think a lot of them even, like, talk to witnesses a lot of the time because they just kind of have their commentary and they don't really look into it.
Yeah.
There's that, too, where, it's because some people are just, so narcissistic, I guess. They just want to make it about themselves. And so, then it just, becomes, well, look, I went to this spot where this was said to have happened, as though that's somehow contributing to a larger field of study. But,
right.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And so I feel like we're at a point now where we can sort of recognize some of those red flags, when they pop up. But, I guess that's kind of the irony of this field, too, is like the hardest part about it isn't the paranormal. It really isn't. It's people.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of people, the front page of your website states, whether it's lending advice via email or showing up on your doorstep to investigate the weird sounds in your attic, we want to help. Please never hesitate to contact us if you have a story to share, want us to investigate potentially anomalous phenomena, provide paranormal support with an ongoing issue, or just need someone with which to talk. And I was wondering, how many people actually do reach out to you guys, and do you have a vetting process to determine who's being genuine and who may just be pulling your leg for their own entertainment?
Sure. So we get a decent amount of people who reach out. As far as people who contact us, via email, we probably get a good, 10 or so reports every month if you were to average it out. As far as like a vetting process too, so like I said before, I won't publish anything where I'm not able to speak to someone directly. And if the only way that they're willing to communicate is, say, through email, for instance, like, that's still fine. Like, it'll take a little bit more. Like, I might need a little bit more convincing than if I'm able to speak to them directly. But I can usually parse out relatively quickly in a conversation with somebody or a correspondence, whether or not they're just having fun. I'll tell you, in my experience, hoaxers don't usually respond, period. Especially when you start asking them questions, because they know that they don't have answers for them.
Yeah.
And so they tend to just clam up. Most hoaxers that I've seen, they'll, maybe they have a bogus photo or just some BS story or something, and they'll put it out there, and then they don't really say much after. And so, frankly, just not publishing stuff like that, not publishing things that we can't verify with people, with whom we've spoken, that weeds a lot of it out right there. As far as, other hoaxers, you have to keep at them, frankly. Like, if I feel like somebody's holding something back, which happens a lot, as far as, information when it comes to hoaxers, it doesn't happen a lot in general, but I think when you're dealing with somebody who might be making something up, they won't want to answer your questions directly. They'll be a little evasive. They'll promise evidence that they never actually deliver. It's just one of those things where you have to keep digging until you have all of the answers. And, in some cases, all of the answers that you can verify, that is. So, just as an example, there's really basic stuff you can always verify, and always should, just to make sure somebody's story matches up with, just some scientifically measurable stuff. So, weather and geographic data. That's super easy to verify. You can go on the internet and make sure that that's all correct in 10 minutes, And then, again, if somebody's just generally being evasive and not delivering evidence that they promised or not answering your questions directly, then that's one of those things where there's a good chance they are, and if they are, it almost always comes out. Almost always. So, yeah, I guess my personal philosophy is too, and I probably should have led with this, is I always approach someone's story as though they're telling the truth, unless I have direct evidence to the contrary. So, because part of that is, if you immediately start interrogating people and you treat them like they're lying to you, you're not going to get very many witnesses who are going to talk to you. Frankly, you're just not. And so, if that means that I entertain some hoaxer for like a wild afternoon, where they just kind of leave me around until I figure it out, so be it. It's not going to get published, and if it does, there's been a couple of times now where I've published a story, and again, when I'm publishing an article or something, I'm never going like, well, this is for sure aliens or a Mothman or something. So if I have to publish a retraction or something, you'd be like, well, some new information has come to light, and I found out that this is a hoax or something. Then I publish the retraction, and that's it. I just let people know. It's going to happen sometimes.
And you don't ever have any regrets about feeling like you're wasting time with hoaxers?
No, God no. So many of these people, most of them, I think I probably had total, in over a decade of investigating, I've had maybe 5 cases that were definite waste of time hoaxes. Most of the people with whom I speak are sincere. They're authentic, and frankly, enough of them are scared, and that they need somebody to talk to. That, of course, it's worth it. Let me tell you that the most common narrative that I get from witnesses, especially like monster witnesses, not like Bigfoot sightings. Those are relatively common enough in mainstream society where I think people can talk about them a little bit more. But your Mothman witnesses, just pterosaurs, just anything that's even more off the beaten path than say like Bigfoot or lights in the sky or something. The most common narrative is these people, they will encounter the impossible. They'll see this thing, whatever it is, whatever their experience is, and it changes their life. It changes how they see the world. And they want to talk about it, They want to tell people. And they'll go, and the first thing they do is they go to a loved one. Could be a spouse or a sibling or a close friend. And they tell this person that they love, that they trust. So that person laughs at them. Yeah. And then they don't talk about it again until they find somebody like me. And that's so many people that it's unbelievable. It's almost every single witness that I talk to has this common experience. So, no, I don't regret it for a second. I would talk to, 10 hoaxers to just help one person like that, frankly. Luckily, the actual ratio is much more in our favor. But, yeah, it's not a waste of time if we get to do that.
Right on. Well, I guess one of my closing questions here is that if we subscribe to your Patreon, what can we expect?
Oh boy.
What can you add?
No, I feel like Emily has a really good handle on this, so I'll toss the ball at her here.
So it depends. We have a various level of tiers for any budget or level of interest. Definitely, we have a $1, which is minimal commitment, and that lets you have access to our community, which is great because it's very, it's very engaging. Everybody's there is genuine. They want to be there, so the conversations are more candid, I would say. So that's a private Facebook group we have. And then you get a free phone background and a free reading every week.
What kind of reading?
Oh. And then up from there, we have, if you're at $5 or above, we have exclusive video content, investigation footage. We have a podcast that's exclusive for members.
Oh, yeah.
And at $10, which is a society level, you can get a membership kit depending on the seniority of your tier. And then also, we have monthly live streams with our members.
Yeah,
So
and those are all really exciting. Yeah.
Those are cool.
That is all the questions I have.
I guess I have one final question, I guess, 'cause I think we're kind of got all the questions we had ready. I mean, because you talk about misconceptions, especially with cryptozoology. Do you guys think that Mothman has as rock hard abs as the statue does?
That statue is one of my least favorite things in the world.
Oh, no.
Like, you can ask my friends about it. Every time I see that stupid thing, I'm just like, what fever dream gave us this statue that doesn't match a single eyewitness account anywhere? Like, what happened?
They took creative liberties.
Mothman got jacked.
Right.
Yeah, Liberties is being generous.
That thing's free Tumblr.
What
was that?
Say again.
I was wondering if the statue is pre-Tumblr.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know, maybe.
Tumblr takes a lot of liberties with the Mothman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't been on Tumblr for years.
You're not missing anything.
Well,
Not since DashCon.
I think that's about all the time we have.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys enjoyed this interview, please check out Tobias and Emily's work at the Singular Fortean, at their official website, singularfortean.com. I always want to say singularforteansociety.com, but the website is beautifully designed by Emily Wayland.
Whoop whoop.
And if you guys feel like you want to support their research and their efforts, please subscribe to their Patreon. And with that, I guess we'll begin our outros.
Yeah, I think that's been a heck of a time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Emily, for joining us today. It was a great pleasure talking with you.
We had a lot
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And we really enjoyed it. And if you want to know about us more, you can check us on Instagram and Twitter for me at AlexDaiKaiju. That's Alex DAIKAIJU. And what about yourself?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as well. It's Jasmine Maywith. It's JASMINEMAEWITH.
And what about you, fella?
You can find me at the Eli Watson on Instagram, and you can follow our official at Cryptid Campfire Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and visit
We got the website.
our official cryptidcampfire.com website, where you can get your official Cryptid Campfire t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a Patreon of our own.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.